The transport shuttle docked with a sound that suggested it had learned to sigh from long experience. The hatch opened late. The lights flickered once as if reconsidering their life choices, and then gravity adjusted half a second too slow, causing everyone inside to wobble in a way that looked undignified across species. No one commented. This was considered a smooth arrival. The assignment had been described as ordinary. Ordinary pay, ordinary duration, ordinary risk, which in off-world contracts usually meant statistically survivable. The station itself hung above the gas giant like an afterthought, all layered rings and asymmetrical spires, built by at least 3 civilizations who clearly disagreed on what counted as a straight line. The air smelled faintly metallic, faintly floral, and faintly like someone had tried to disinfect the concept of space itself. He stepped out with the rest of the human workers, each of them clutching a data slate and the quiet hope of not being individually noticed. Individually noticed was how accidents began. A floating drone scanned him from head to boots, paused, rescanned, then projected a soft blue symbol that meant nothing to him but apparently meant something to the drone, because it emitted a chirp that sounded suspiciously pleased. "Gate C," the drone translated, in a voice too cheerful for a machine that could probably dissolve a person if annoyed. "Correction, Gate F correction, remain where you are." He remained where he was. This was not difficult. What was difficult was watching everyone else be waved through security while he stood alone, holding his slate like a prop in a play he had not auditioned for. A tall insectoid being glanced at him, mandibles twitching in what might have been sympathy or might have been hunger. After several minutes, another drone arrived. This one was larger, matte black, and silent in the unsettling way that suggested it did not feel the need to announce itself. "You are misassigned," it said. "That tracks," he replied, before thinking better of it. The drone did not react, which was either professionalism or quiet judgment. He was guided through corridors that subtly changed material as they went, metal to crystal to something that felt warmer underfoot, as if the station had grown tired of pretending it was inanimate. Signs shifted language automatically, helpfully translating into human standard, though occasionally lagging just enough to turn warnings into vague suggestions. Do not enter during phase realignment became enter after thinking IT through. Eventually, they stopped at a chamber that looked far too ceremonial for anything labeled ordinary. Light refracted in slow, deliberate patterns, and the air hummed with contained energy. He became acutely aware that his boots were scuffed. "You will wait," the drone said. "For how long?" A pause, yes. The drone departed. Silence settled, thick but not hostile, like a room holding its breath. He shifted his weight, glanced around, and resisted the urge to touch anything glowing. Experience had taught him that glowing was rarely an invitation. When the doors opened again, they did so without sound. She stood just inside, and his first thought was that the station lighting had improved dramatically. She looked human enough that his brain tried to categorize her immediately, then failed as the details refused to align. Her eyes reflected the light oddly, as if catching colors he couldn't see. Fine lines along her skin shimmered faintly, appearing and fading like a private language written in light. She studied him with an expression that balanced curiosity and restrained amusement. "This is the protector they sent?" She asked, not unkindly. He looked behind himself, just in case someone more impressive had arrived unnoticed. "I can wait if you're expecting someone else." Her mouth curved just slightly. "No, I don't think I am." The hum of the chamber shifted, adjusting to their presence. Somewhere beyond the walls, systems recalibrated, traditions flexed, and an unremarkable human worker realized that his very ordinary assignment had just become something no one had bothered to explain. The notification arrived before the breakfast nutrient gel had finished arguing with gravity. His wrist unit chimed once, politely, then displayed a message that made no sense and therefore demanded immediate attention. "Report to observation ring 7. Do not bring tools. Do not bring expectations." The system helpfully added a small icon suggesting calm breathing. Observation Ring 7 turned out to be a circular corridor that rotated just fast enough to remind everyone inside that physics was optional out here. A cluster of beings waited along the inner rail, none of them speaking, all of them pretending very hard not to stare at one another. He took a place between a furred quadruped and something that appeared to be made of folded glass. No one acknowledged him, which was comforting in the way only shared social discomfort could be. A tone sounded. The floor steadied. The glass being sighed, which was impressive given its apparent lack of lungs. A figure stepped into the ring. She looked human enough that several species relaxed by reflex, then stiffened again when their instincts caught up. The light patterns along her skin shifted in slow pulses, like annotations correcting an invisible text. She scanned the group, her gaze lingering just long enough on each face to suggest she was counting something more complicated than bodies. "This is inefficient," she said, "but tradition insists." Someone coughed. The quadruped made a noise that might have been agreement or indigestion. She continued, "You have been selected for evaluation, not for combat, not for loyalty. If you were good at either, you would not be here." That earned a few offended clicks, and one muttered insult translated inaccurately into praise. Her eyes stopped on him. He smiled reflexively, the way humans did when unsure whether smiling would help or get them detained. The light along her wrist flared, then dimmed. "You," she said, "why are you here?" He considered lying, then remembered that advanced civilizations tended to be very good at noticing. "I followed the instructions." A pause. Something in the ring adjusted, as if the station itself leaned in. "That is not an answer," she said. "It's the best one I have." A ripple moved through the observers, lining the outer wall. He became aware that this was being recorded, archived, and possibly argued about later by people with far better furniture than his. She tilted her head. "You were not chosen for heritage, or strength, or probability modeling." Her tone suggested mild irritation with all three. "Do you know why you were chosen?" "No," he said, "but I'm guessing it wasn't the smile." "That helped," she said, and the ring reacted as if surprised. The glass being emitted a sharp chime. The quadruped laughed, an unmistakable sound even across species. She turned away from him, addressing the group again. "You may go. Evaluation complete." There was a beat of stunned silence before everyone left at once, fleeing tradition the moment it allowed escape. He stayed where he was, mostly because no one had told him otherwise. She looked back. "You're still here." I didn't want to be inefficient. For a moment, the light patterns along her skin scattered like static, then they settled. "Good," she said. "We will need that." Somewhere deep in the station, an alert quietly updated several ancient protocols. No one asked permission. The station decided to test him on a day when nothing dramatic was scheduled, which was how most dramatic things began. His wrist unit rerouted him 3 times before settling on a path that looped back on itself, as if checking whether he would complain. He didn't. He stopped at a vendor node instead and purchased a cup of something labeled warm beverage adjacent. It tasted like optimism and regret. She was already there when he arrived at the assigned chamber, sitting where sitting was optional, watching a projection of slow-moving star maps that kept rearranging themselves. The light lines along her hands flickered faintly, reacting to the shifting data. She glanced at the cup. "That will not help you," she said. "It might," he replied, emotionally. She made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been her people's equivalent of an eye roll. "Stand there," she said, gesturing vaguely. The floor complied before he did. A low hum filled the space. He waited for instructions. None came. "This is the part where something tries to kill me, isn't it?" he asked. "No," she said. "That comes later." That's reassuring, in a timeline sense. The hum changed. The air thickened slightly, like the moment before a storm, except indoors and with more witnesses. Panels along the walls became transparent, revealing observers beyond them, figures of many shapes, all pretending to be neutral. He waved. No one waved back. "You are calm," she said. "I'm not," he said. "I'm just bad at panicking in public." The hum spiked. A construct unfolded from the floor, all sharp angles and quiet menace, its surface crawling with symbols that hurt to look at too directly. He took a step back, then stopped when the floor declined to move him. "That's new," he said. "Is it friendly?" "It has never been friendly," she replied. "It tests reactions." The construct advanced. He felt the familiar urge to run, followed by the equally familiar realization that running was unlikely to improve his situation. Instead, he raised his hands slowly. "Hi," he said to the construct. "I don't know what you want, but I promise I'm not worth the effort." It paused, the symbols rippled. She tilted her head. "It's confused." "Me too," he said. "We have that in common." The construct emitted a tone that rattled his bones but didn't break anything important. He resisted the urge to make a joke about warranties. The light lines along her arms flared, bright enough that the observers shifted. "Do something," one of them hissed, the translation lagging just enough to sound desperate. He looked at her. Any suggestions? Yes, she said. Continue. So he did, he spoke. Not commands, not threats, just narration. He talked about the station's confusing corridors, about the beverage that lied, about how humans survived by pretending things made sense until they did. The construct's movement slowed, its symbols dulled, the hum softened. When it finally withdrew, folding back into the floor like a bad idea reconsidered, the chamber went very quiet. That was not protocol, someone said. No, she agreed. She looked at him, and this time the light along her skin didn't flicker at all. But it worked. He exhaled, so did I pass. She smiled, small and real. You are still here. Somewhere, ancient systems updated again, increasingly annoyed at being proven wrong. By the time the station announced its intention to enter ceremonial alignment, everyone already knew something had gone wrong. Ceremonial alignments were precise, solemn affairs involving light, gravity, and traditions old enough to have developed opinions. This one hesitated, recalculated twice, and finally projected a notice that translated loosely as proceeding, but with reservations. He stood beside her at the center of the ring, where the air felt steadier than it should have. The observers filled every tier, their presence heavy with expectation and quiet alarm. Somewhere among them were the lineage keepers, the ritual enforcers, and several beings who had lost money betting against a human lasting this long. You could still leave, she said, her voice low. The light along her skin glowed softly, no longer reactive but intentional. No one would pursue you. He considered it, really did. Then he shifted his weight, feeling the floor respond as it had learned to do. I know, he said, but I'm curious how this ends. That earned him a look that was equal parts fond and exasperated. Humans, she murmured, you treat fate like a puzzle instead of a warning. The alignment began. Gravity twisted gently, not enough to hurt, just enough to remind everyone that the universe was flexible when it felt like it. Symbols formed in the air, ancient constructs of authority and obligation. They reached for her, testing, measuring, preparing to bind. They stopped. A murmur rippled through the tiers. The symbols flickered, recalculated, then shifted direction, looping instead around both of them. The station hummed, surprised but compliant. That's not correct, someone said loudly. She smiled, slow and dangerous. Neither is most of what you believe. The symbols settled, lighter now, less restrictive. Not chains, parameters. Mutual, a voice echoed, layered with systems and tradition. Protector designation requires dominance. He raised a hand. Quick question, who decided that? Silence stretched, no one answered. He went on because stopping felt like a bad habit. I didn't dominate anything, I showed up, I listened. I stayed calm when your machines tried to scare me. That's kind of our thing. A few observers shifted, uncomfortable. One laughed despite themselves, the voice recalibrated. Protector designation revised. The symbols dissolved, replaced by a simple acknowledgement that felt more like a handshake than a contract. The alignment ended, anticlimactically, as most meaningful things did. Later, when the crowds dispersed and the station returned to its usual controlled chaos, they walked the long corridor overlooking the gas giant. Its storms rolled endlessly, beautiful and indifferent. You're different, she said, from when you arrived. He thought about it, about fear that no longer dictated every step, about standing in rooms meant to unmake him and choosing to speak instead. I think I finally stopped trying to be unremarkable, he said. She nodded. That is growth. They stopped at the viewport. The station lights reflected faintly in her eyes, fracturing into colors he still couldn't name. What happens now? He asked. She glanced at him. Now we see